Okay, let's get moving. I mean, I guess this is a slightly different presentation as much that I've no clear facts to put up, but what I do have is an industry perspective of what is going on, and in terms of world future food demand, how an industry such as mine can actually fit into that. And I'll start at the macro and then peel it back right down to the micro. So basically what I'm doing is balancing the future demands with the current pressures, because at the end of the day, for business to supply, it has to remain in business. I mean, who is the Scottish Whitefish Producers Association, the association I'm chief executive of? We are a trade protection organisation. I represent about 230 vessels. We turn over about 200 million a year, and we represent, well, it's about 1,400 fishermen actually. It's kind of went up. We're based in the northeast of Scotland. We're the biggest trade association in Europe, and probably the most forward-looking. I think it would be useful at the very outset to take a look at what's going on in Europe, both in terms of how the fleet's responding to change and indeed what's happening with the stocks. And it's still clear that there's still a load of stocks that are not within maximum sustainable yield harvesting limits. I mean, the green bars there you can see are stocks that are exploited at a level delivering maximum sustainable yield. The sort of amber, they're overexploited. The red, they're not wreck cases, but they need vast improvement. And the white is basically stocks that we know nothing about or don't know anything about that we should at the level that we should, to be fair. It doesn't mean to say there's no information, but it's just not packaged in the right way. This here just now, and I wouldn't pay too much attention to this, but what it does do is it lists the amount of vessels that's currently operating in Europe. And you can see there's just over 83,000 vessels in Europe. 85% of that, interestingly, are below 12 metres in length, which is, it means that there's loads of artisanal fisheries out there, the majority of which I guess are in the Mediterranean. One column I would ask you to look at is the far right column, because in the future, if we are going to supply future demands or continue to supply in any reasonable level, then what the right-hand column suggests that there's a clear lack of investment going into the industry. I mean, the average there is quite woeful. In fact, in Scotland, it's actually worse than that, to be fair. But that's an old fleet, significantly aged fleet. But I think what is important to understand is that even within a European context, and European fisheries takes quite a bit of hammering, and I guess it's an appropriate hammering, the number of vessels coming down, both in terms of EU 12, 15, 25, and more recently 27, has continued. Now, that doesn't mean that there's less fish being extracted, or the amount of sort of, what would I say, the amount of effort going into the fishery has decreased, but the amount of vessels has certainly decreased. And in terms of the size of vessel kilowatts and the tonnage, the trend is downwards as well. So that's a useful trend. So everyone's going to come to terms with the fact that things have got to decrease. I think what is important about what I'm going to say is I'm going to take it right back, strip it right back to Scottish context. There's no sense in me coming down here and speaking about sole or place fishing in the English Channel, because I know absolutely nothing about it, and nor do I want to know anything about it. My speciality, Scotland, Northern North Sea, Rockall, Atlantic, that's what I know best. But it is important here that you can see the majority of fish is coming into Scotland. So when you talk about food security in the future, in terms of the UK playing a part in that, Scotland is the major player in there. Most of it comes into Scotland, indeed, and certainly all the pelagic fisheries. Pelagic, by that I mean majority, basically Atlantic-Scandia herring and mackerel. The majority of that is landed into Scotland. And if you look at even the sort of Scottish context, where my organisation lies up to the northeast of Scotland, you can see the majority of fish is coming into these ports. It's Fraserburgh, it's Peterhead, and it's up in the Shetland Islands up to the north of Scotland. And indeed, if you look at where that fish are being extracted from, you can see they're being extracted from the northern part of the North Sea. So we're not raping and pillaging other areas. We're actually catching these fish back in home waters. So what we do there in our own waters is extremely important in terms of us playing our part in the future supply of fish. So what I'm going to do is, and I see there's been a little wee hiccup with the font here, I'm going to bring the discussion right back. I'm going to discuss what we're doing in Scotland in terms of sustainable exploitation of the natural resource, optimisation and efficiency of the fishing business, creation of good governance through the use of co-management structures, stewardship in the marine environment, and the sustainability of local communities. And what I would say here is that my view here of playing our future plan is maintaining business. For me, fishing is about business. For some others, it may be small boats and small amounts of fish. In Scotland, it's about business. And up there, we think that if we walk a parallel path with the green NGOs, and at the end of the day, we get to the point of sustainability in terms of economics, and we deliver it for them in terms of the green credentials, then that's two parallel sort of paths that's actually worked well. Because at the end of the day, it's difficult to be green while you're in the red. So maintaining profitability through the period of change is extremely useful. Without it, business fails, you fail to supply for future needs, and it all comes crashing down about your ears. So in terms of optimization efficiency of fishing business, what have we done up in Scotland to maintain that? Well, we run two decommissioning schemes, 2001 and 2003. We took out 175 vessels out of the system. Now, that decreased mortality in the stocks, but more importantly, it allowed the profitability of the fleet that was left to be maintained. That was the important thing for us. The other thing we're currently doing just now is trying to remove costs from business, because whatever anybody else is telling you, whether it's Hugh Fernley Whittingstall or whoever it is, at the end of the day, the stocks are recovering. Fishermen are actually catching more fish, and they're spending less time at sea to do so. So that's a good thing, okay? But what we need to do is remove cost of business, and up in Scotland just now, in terms of the quota allocations, it's costing us money to shift it between vessels, which is an unnecessary cost, and we're looking at the reduction of that cost. So vessels can then go and reinvest into new vessels, and the initial chart I showed you with that average age, we're trying to reduce that down to 5 years old, 10 years old, but we can't do that without profit. So maintaining that is very, very, we need to do it, put it that way. The maintenance of the market share. I remember receiving a presentation by Marks and Spencer's, and I think it was in 2005, and they said by 2012 they would not purchase any fish from non-certified sources. So we set about trying to certify the stocks that we had, and we moved on MSC certification. And we now have haddock in there, we're now looking at saithe, whiting, nephrops, anglerfish. We're looking at all our major stocks to put it through there to retain the market share. Because without the ability to sell your fish, you make no money and the business fails. And we're also trying to catch for the market. We want to turn ourselves into price makers rather than price takers. That's a very, very important factor. Just taking the price someone gives you is not necessarily the price you need to run your business. And what we're trying to do is develop best practice and handling and quality. I mean, the quality of the product for us is an important issue, as is the development of new technologies. So what we're trying to do is create efficiency. Most businesses, whether it be a farm or whatever, moves to the point of maximum efficiency. And through bad regulation or whatever over the last decade in Europe, what we've tried to plan is inefficiency. And what you should not do with business is plan inefficiency, because eventually you'll take it down. So what we're now doing is developing cameras in the headline. So when the net gets towed along, we have a camera there looking at the fish going in, and when we think we've got enough in terms of quality, in terms of the abundance, we heave on. It's about optimizing the operation. An improved vessel design. I mean, the price of fuel now is absolutely horrendous. I'm not entirely sure what it was today, $105 a barrel. 25 to 35% of a vessel's expenditure is in fuel to try and catch the fish. So actually, intelligent vessel design is a useful thing. CFP reform. Everyone knows about CFP reform. We know that the CFP to this day has failed us largely because no one bought into it. Fishermen didn't accept it. They weren't in the process when it was made. And anarchy prevailed. Virtual anarchy prevailed. But in Scotland now, we're in a position where there is zero non-compliance. Very few people break the law now because they understand the system, because they think they're a part of it. So what we're trying to do is bring management back to the member state level. Just now it's macro-managed from Brussels. We're trying to bring it back to the sort of the region, so that the fishermen and the member state create the policy, hand it up, get it accepted, and get it applied to everyone in a sort of very even-handed way. So we're talking about inclusive fisheries policy, greater buy-in from the fishers, because those that don't know the fishing industry, once he goes out the harbour limits, once he goes over the horizon, that skipper can do anything he wants. If he doesn't appreciate, recognise the system, because he wasn't a part of it, he'll break the rules. There is no reason why he should not to try and optimise the efficiency, high grading or whatever. So he's got to buy in. So we need that procedure. If we don't get that, it kind of starts to fall apart. Regional advisory councils. These are councils of stakeholders throughout, for instance, the North Sea. I'm the vice chair of the North Sea Regional Advisory Council, and we sit down with Greens, scientists, managers, industry and we try and come up and advise the Commission the best way ahead. And it leads into this sort of good governance structure. If we're going to get it, or we're going to be successful at it, then we've got to build it from the bottom, and that includes everyone. So, back home in Scotland, we have a thing called FMAP, Fisheries Management and Conservation Group. We conveniently dropped the G for whatever reason. But in there, we manage fisheries in Scotland. We sit down with government, scientists, and everyone else. It's like a replication of the RAC. And we develop new ways ahead. And, you know, I'm pleased to be able to say this, that we've reduced the capture of cod by 80% with intellectual nets designed by fishermen. We've reduced the capture of unwanted species by 70%. That's small haddocks, small whiting, and other things. So we're doing tremendous things, and I guess most of you don't know about that. And in Scotland last year, we closed areas to protect spawning cod. 40,000 square miles we closed to protect spawning cod. I mean, that's tremendous. And this was started by fishermen, for fishermen, by fishermen. We create selective nets. The guy on the left, that's the First Minister of Scotland, called Alex Salmond. And you can see the size of the mesh in these nets, and you'd wonder why we catch a fish. We wonder that too at times. But at the end of the day, it works for us. And it makes us more selective, allows us to go to the market with confidence, the types of Marks and Spencer's, MSC certification, because it works for us. It doesn't work for everybody, but it certainly works for us. Nets. We now have nets that stand 1 foot high, whereas before they used to be able to basically swamp this room. They now stand 1 foot high, and we just catch the target species. There's a catch of what we call nephrops. Well, we call them Scottish langoustine because we get 10p a kilo more. But this was the catch before we used the net. This was the catch after the net. So immediately you can see the benefit to the stocks. It's immediate. And the good thing is, fishermen want to use this now because they see that it actually improves the quality. If it improves the quality, it means that's less work for the fishers on board, and it actually means more to the boat in terms of profit. But more importantly, it contributes to the long-term ability of the stock to recover. We now understand this, and we're trying to do it properly. But not only that, we're thinking about the wider marine environment. We're thinking about intelligent gears. We're thinking about protecting reefs. We're thinking about, you know, developing light clumps so that it doesn't affect the sort of burrowed mud. It certainly doesn't affect sea pens. We pick up our litter now. We have bags aboard the boat to contain the litter. We work through chemo. And we're working with others to develop marine conservation areas. So whereas I'm up here trying to defend the industry, I don't have to defend it. The industry has got credentials that probably, you know, exceed most of you out there. People think it's a negative thing, fishing. It's not negative. It's a very positive thing carried in a very positive and sensible way. And I think people should probably come to understand that story. But more importantly for us, I guess, in terms of maintaining the sort of food security moving forward, it's actually about maintaining the local coastal communities as well. Because what we need is an array of ports and harbours up and down the coast, because it gives you choice. And in there, I mean, I chair one group, and we are now looking at local sustainability plans for things like local nephrop stocks to protect that local community if the stock declines. What do we do if the stock goes down, yet the big boats come in? Well, we can drop a plan that allows the small boats to live, and we can get the big boats to sign that off because they understand it. So these are all good things that feed in there, as indeed inshore fisheries groups in Scotland, which have only come along lately, but are very, very good. And we're now starting to move into partnership with renewables. We're not the only stakeholder out there. We're not the only user of the sea. And the more closely we can work with others, then the better it is for us. And more importantly, I think it's about vertical integration and cooperation. Before, we used to work in isolated units. We had the boat, he landed at the market. We now have the boat, but he talks to the factory before he comes in, and the factory talks to the processor. So now we're working in sort of vertical integration or vertical cooperation, where there is no sort of shareholding link between the company and the vessel. And at the end of the day, that picture there was taken by a friend of mine. 2 boats the same. This was taken by one of another. The boat survived. But I think what we should all recognize is that all the good things that I'm telling you are going on, they're going on in a very, very harsh environment. A very harsh environment. And it's actually been carried out to a level, and I've been in this 2 decades now, a level that I would not have thought possible. And we talk about change. The fishing industry moved from sail to steam to diesel, and it thought that was a significant shift. We are now moving from an environment where we thought discards and wanted catches was okay, to a point that we're driving sustainable fishing. And once we're through it, we'll recognise that that was as a significant shift as moving from sail to steam and steam to diesel. Thank you very much. Thanks.